Hi, my name is Michael Chapman, and this is my partner Tom Oberhue, and this is our perspective on conceptual jiu-jitsu. Segment 2, Flowing Pressures. Welcome to Segment 2, Flowing Pressures. Flowing pressures we define as mobility as pressure, an alternative to using weighted pressure to hold your opponent down, as we did in Segment 1. We're going to use movement and mobility to keep our advantage. We're going to cover 3 elements: the glide, the spike, and the tether. These elements will demonstrate our conceptual expression of mobility as pressure. The first element of flowing pressure that we're going to cover is the glide. The glide is the movement of my body across my opponent's body, in this case, the hip glide. We're going to use that movement to pin our opponent while we take a new position. We're going to start on cross sides. Troy will roll into me to escape. I'll resist that by pressuring into him, check his hip, and then glide over. Notice that I don't separate from Troy. I maintain contact, and that's important. That contact is what's going to help you keep him down. The difference between technical and conceptual teaching. I think that most instructors out there take the approach that they're going to give you A, B, and C, and you're going to put them all together. Our approach is different. Our approach is, here's the concept. Let's see how that fits within your dynamic. This DVD set is not a technical 1, 2, 3 step DVD set. What we're going to do is show you some wide, broad concepts that will fit within your game. If you're somebody who gets to train all the time with high-class training or high-end trainers, you're going to be able to still utilize this conceptually. If you're somebody that's training out of your own small training group, you'll still be able to use this conceptually, and that's an important piece. We hope to give you a package of information that you can form to fit into whatever you're doing, what your training is all about. You guys know when we wrestle in the gym, there's a lot of options, right? One guy wrestles one way, one guy does a submission another way, and it all sort of blends together. It fits sort of what the body's doing, how you're wrestling, what kind of speed you have, what kind of strength you have, what kind of endurance you have. All those things sort of pile in. What we're going to go over today is a way of controlling your opponent, creating pressure against your opponent through movement. We call it flowing pressure. I do this a lot because when I wrestle a lot of the guys in the gym here, I give up weight. And one of the problems I run into is I lock myself to my opponent to hold them down, and they roll me over. They take advantage of that position. So what I'm going to go over tonight is the idea of having your pressure, creating a lot of pressure, a lot of defense out of your opponent by moving around, by staying attached when you need to, but not being so attached that they can roll you over. I'm going to give you a quick demonstration. Troy's on the bottom. Mike's gained top position. Mike's smart about grabbing on. He's trying to stay positioned. He's trying to keep his base. He's trying to spread out. But Troy is larger than Mike by a little bit. And because of that, Troy's able to roll Mike. And with Mike's attachment to Troy, it actually is easier for Troy to do this. So go ahead, Troy. What we don't want is to be Mike. We don't want to have that roll happen to us. We want to be on top position and take advantage of it, but we don't want to get rolled because of it. So what we're going to play with tonight is a couple of different ways of adjusting for this. All right, so the idea is I'm going to take cross sides position. And just like with Mike, if I really clamp onto Troy and he's able to roll me, that's a problem. Another thing that Troy can do because of his strength and size is really roll into me. He can force his position at me. When he does that, I'm susceptible to him taking my leg, him getting to his knees, a collection of things. What I don't want is for him to roll over and mash me to the ground and take top position. So what we're going to do in that instance is rather than fight that, we're going to transition to the other side. All right? We're going to move across his body. Now you watch what I do. This is one way of doing this. There's a bunch we're going to go over, but the idea is I've got my cross-sides position as he moves in at me. Rather than really forcing him back or trying to force him back, I'm going to allow him to turn in. I'm going to check this hip, and I'm going to switch hip over. And it gives me that back position, right? So the main thing I've done is gotten away from his hands and his legs. I've gotten to a position that's safe. I'll do it one more time, and then we're going to play with it like a drill. So I've got cross-sides position. He pops over. All I'm going to do is check his hip and come over. If he were to roll into me at this point, I would do the same thing. Hit the hip and come over. Right? Now I'm switching my legs. What I don't want you to do in this drill is, as he comes at me, to step over him. You can see where that leaves my leg, right? An opportunity for him to grab with his leg or grab with his arms. What I want to do is switch my hips. I'll do it one more time, and then I'm going to ask you guys to grab partners. So we're here. He turns into me. I check. I come over. I've got the backside, right? I can settle him down, or what we're going to do for a drill, he's going to continue to turn into me. He's going to turn in, check, come over, check, come over, check, come over. Okay? We'll play with that.
Let me speak about it in a broader sense first, and then I'll talk about Michael's specific game. I think that the benefit of an alive delivery system, or alive training in general, is the fact that given a specific period of time, the individual's personality becomes reflected in their performance. This is only possible if you're training in an alive art. It's impossible in a choreographed art, obviously, because it's not your personality that's performing, it's a pattern that you picked up from somebody else. So it has to be an alive art. Problem is, there's lots of alive arts. Okay? There's judo and boxing and Muay Thai and wrestling, and the list is pretty long. And given enough time, and by time, usually, of course I'm talking about hours on the mat, but usually we're talking about years. And it's been my experience, I would say maybe 7 to 8 years for the average person. Sometimes there's people that are really gifted, and within 3 or 4 years they begin to develop a style, but I think for most people it takes 7 to 8, sometimes even 10 years. And who cares whether it's short or long, but that's the amount of time. Problem with some of the other arts is they're so brutal on the body over that period of time that there's not a lot of people, especially if you're not making money at it and it's not your livelihood, that are going to want to do Muay Thai sparring for 8 years, and to the point where they begin to develop their own kind of ring style in the way that somebody like, some professional Thai champion has. But with Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, you can do that because it's gentle, or it should be if it's done properly. So anybody can train it for 8 or 9 years. Now, after that period of time, and they've learned the fundamentals, and they've learned how to play the game, and they start to play the game a lot, what happens is their personality is directly reflected in how they roll. And that's what makes this, for me, that's part of what makes this interesting. So you could see it in how they approach work, how they approach social relationships. Their overall demeanor is reflected in their performance on the mat. And I don't mean that in the sense of whether they make people tap or not. I mean that in how they move. And how they move is obviously connected to how their mind works, and how their mind works is connected to their personality. 3 words for the same thing. So, having said that, now in Michael's case, I think that Michael is very, very good at going with the flow, so to speak. As things arise, he moves with them, and you could say it's in a random way because it's not pre-planned, but not even getting into that subject, I think that is reflected in a lot of different aspects with Michael, just as my jiu-jitsu game reflects my personality and Tom's jiu-jitsu game reflects Tom's personality quite a bit. And so I think when you watch him move on the mat, you're watching a physical reflection of that, which is really cool. Now, how that plays out for him is because he's smaller and lighter, he's learned to go with people's momentum, to ride sweeps out instead of sprawling on them, to play a floating top game instead of a heavy top game the way I might play. To move, he has to move more often than I do or a heavier athlete does, just based on physics and leverage. So that's a big part of it. But it's also, his personality, his ability to work with what's given to him in a spontaneous way. And I'm sure that applies to all kinds of different places of his life. And you can see that in how he pulls submissions out. There's no plan. When he rolls, there's not a plan to it, nor should there be. But that's That's his style. I think it's important that everybody teaches those fundamentals, and as he teaches those fundamentals, there will be people that will come through his class that will mimic his motion, and that because they're of similar personality and perhaps body style will play his type of game. And there's other people that won't. And he may have an athlete that comes through and plays a real heavy, crushing top game, and he's perfectly capable of teaching that. And that's what's important, is that we give the people the freedom to develop that style.
How would I describe wrestling Michael? Michael sucks. I think, I think he sucks, and and that he's made me grow a lot. And I mean, I don't think it's necessarily like the technique that makes a person tough. It's like the mental pressure they put on you. And like with Chapman, what I find is he'll get me in a position and I'll stop to think. He's not like a traditional like BJJ guy. He makes up positions. And I don't even know if he I think it's like unconscious competence. I don't even know if he really knows, what he's doing while he's doing it, but it makes me uncomfortable, from a mental standpoint. So I stopped to like think about this funky position that I've never seen on a videotape or anywhere, at the gym. And I stopped to think, and when I stopped to think about how I'm going to get out on this, he's sinking in tighter and tighter in whatever he wants to do, and eventually, he gets me, and that's awesome.
You're just going to do just like this. You're going to lift your hip up, and you're going to bring this knee over his body.
Oh, okay.
There it is. That's it. That's it. Do that again. That was exactly right. Do that again. Inside knee over. There it is. Do it again. Do it again.
Do you ever hooking arms as you're coming over?
Every time. I mean, that's where that idea of a tether comes in. That's exactly what I'm doing. I'm grab and play as I go through.
Like you're here, so you're going to come through that.
Yeah, and in fact, like if there's a collection of things that he might do with this arm. He may drive it underneath me, which is probably the smartest thing for him to do. But as he drives over, go ahead and turn into me. Just turn into me, yeah. So this is a great escape. Keep coming over, keep coming over. You can get to your knees, you can drive me back, all kinds of things, right? So as he's trying to do that, as he drives into me, go a little harder. Here we go. I'm going to come over, and there's an arm here if I want it. I can take it immediately. I can do a choke as he drives into me. Again, I want to resist it. So my shoulder's in play. I'm shouldering into him. I hit over top, and I can take the arm, open it up. I can use it to lay him back down. I can throw it out and do head and arm, whatever you're comfortable with, but yes. So we're not just jumping over. We're not looking for that big gap. That gap's where they're going to turn underneath and maybe grab us with their legs, grab guard, whatever. What we want is to just slide over top. We want to glide hip to hip over top of them.
My question was, you were talking about putting the hand on the hip. Is the hip sufficient, or do you sometimes need to come down and help guard that, keep that knee pushed down?
That's a fantastic question. In reality, what I wanted you to do with that hand was to check the knee down. I want you to pop that knee down. And as far as leverage go, if I have my hand high on your hip, it's easier for to lift that leg. If I put my hand on your knee, it's harder for you to lift that leg. So what I'm looking to do is just check that knee as I put my hip on your hip and slide over. So that pressure, your body pressure, is going to help keep him down while you slide over. But that initial hit or check is important to keep that leg down. You don't want to jump into a guard. You want to get past that. So that's of major importance.
Michael turns corners with no space, and he turns them without effort. He lets you turn the corners for him. Like say he's transitioning to an arm bar from cross sides. Well, he doesn't create pressure where there's no pressure needed, and he'll let you move where you want to move, and things get tighter, and it's really frustrating rolling with him. He does have a very transitional game, a very submission-oriented game. Oftentimes I feel I can move freely where I want to move to around Michael, but it always gets me in trouble. So Yeah, that's Michael's. To me, that's Michael's game.
In this variation, I'm going to glide across Troy's midsection. In this case, rather than roll into me, Troy is trying to elevate me. He's going to push straight into me and slightly to his hips. I'm going to use his energy to move across his midsection. Notice I'll use two different techniques to do that. I want you to see the route more than the technique. All right, the next thing we're going to talk about is big, strong guy just lifts me up, right? It's a real option. I'm trying to hold Troy down. Maybe I didn't get secured early enough, and he got his hands between us and just pushes me up, right? Now, obviously, if he hangs out here, I'm going to hit that arm bar as quick as I can, right? He lifts me up. I'm just going to look for that arm bar. Boom, and settle into it, okay? Probably he's not going to chill out there, though. He's going to lift and throw and move. He's going to lift me up, and he's going to move out from underneath it. What I don't want to do is have that be such a helpful brace to him that I get stuck, okay? If he lifts me, that means I have less friction between us. So, just to give you a quick demonstration, as he lifts me up, what I can do at this point is move around. Depending on where his pressure is, if he's pushing me up in this general direction straight at me, I can easily go around his head. All right? Very simple. It's a very easy idea. I'm no longer attached and have heavy friction. I'm loose. I can move around, right? I can also move across his body. But we have to be careful about that. If he pushes me up and I try to come across his body, you can see where he might grab me in half guard. He might get his legs involved, go ahead and grab at me. So when I move across his body, I have to be really careful about where my legs are going. In fact, we generally recommend don't go around his legs, because he's inviting us into his guard at that point, or we're inviting him to take us to guard. So if I do transition, because he's pushing me, maybe he's pushing into me a little bit more towards his legs, okay? In this general dynamic. Again, because he's pushing at me, what I can do is turn, circular motion. I can turn and spin coming around the top half. If I find that to be difficult and I want to go another direction, what I can do is cross his stomach. I can come across, knee slide over, and come through here. Okay, another glide basically. Why won't I just take mount? Maybe I've wrestled Troy before, and I know that when I'm in mount, it's hard to stay there, and it's hard to create offense. As I move to go after a submission, Troy rolls over. If I'm trying to hold on to Troy, I roll over. We don't want that. So, what we're going to play with right now is you got two options. The feeder's going to give you one of two pushes. He's either going to push you up and slightly to his shoulders, or he's going to push you up and slightly to his hips. What I want you to do with that is basically move in a circular pattern, circular motion. I'm going to circle around his head, or I'm going to circle across his body. Now I'm going to go across his body one more time because I want you to see what I'm doing with my legs. We have a little thing called the windshield wiper, but just to show you quickly, he lifts me up. I drive the knee, and again, I might look for points if this is a tournament. I might look for a knee ride point or 2 points. But what I'm looking for is a submission. I want to get to the other side and be secure on that side. So I'm going to put my knee at him, just like I would in a normal knee ride, and then I'm going to transition by bringing my foot through. You saw how I did that? So again, I'm not sticking my knee and then bringing my leg slowly through that's going to get tangled in his. I'm going to have knee through, I have pressure on him. You can spike his shoulder, whatever you need to do to keep him that way. Once you place your leg on him, though, that's going to help hold him down. I'm going to pressure, slide through, and come down to the other side. You can take cross sides. All right? Lots of reasons to stop, lots of reasons to grab something on the way through there, but I want you to practice the motion. Okay? So grab a partner. Bottom partner is going to lift. He's going to push you either towards your shoulders, towards his hips. If he goes to his shoulders, you're circling around. If he goes towards your hips, I want you to cross his belly like I did.
A couple things we were doing I just want to address real quick. To allow my lower body to move, I'm going to put weight either through my arms on his chest, or I'm going to put my weight on top of his arms as he's pushing at me. So just a quick demonstration of what I'm talking about. It's as Troy pushes up on me, he's going to hold my body weight up in the air. What he's trying to do is push me away so he can adjust, move, get to his knees, whatever he wants. So this pressure is going to help me. That's allowing my legs to be pretty light through here so I don't get caught up in the friction. Now when I use the word light, I mean that in that I can move. That's important, right? I don't want to get caught up. But I still have weight on him. There's a fine line. You're going to probably adjust that. Sometimes you're going to be pressuring him to keep him down. Other times you're going to loosen up so you can move. Now if he's lifting me up, he's making a mistake. He shouldn't be doing that, but it may happen. As he presses up at me, I'm going to slide across his chest to get the other side, or across his stomach to get the other side. My movement is allowed because my weight's forward. And again, if he's not pushing, maybe he pushed up initially, he lifted me initially, and as I started to go, he backed his arms off. That's fine. I'm going to keep my hands on him and slide over. Okay? So initially, he was lifting me, and then as I continued the motion, my pressure on his shoulders did two things. One, kept his shoulders down, but also allowed me to be light enough to move across his body. And I don't want this necessarily. I don't want to necessarily do this. Certainly I can if I want to, but I want to try to keep him down and stay tight to him. I had one of the guys ask me, well, I'm not ending up with a very wide base as I come through. And that's fine because this motion can go directly to a transmission. We don't have to move necessarily to an improved position. We can go from here as he pushes up on me. I shift through. What I'm going to do this time is I'm going to bring my leg out into the arm and back. Okay? So it's part of the motion. We're just going to slide across the body, slide our shin into the armpit, and stay with the arm, take the arm bar.
And from here, I disconnect from the elbow. I'm too far away from him.
That was awesome. You're incredibly fast. Kind of scary, really. What I would change slightly is how much contact you get with that armpit. So what you're doing is you're spinning around. You took the near side arm or the far side arm? You took the far side arm. When he gives me the pressure, I come up, I'm going to actually jam this shin at his armpit. It's like I want to do this. I want to pause. Not really doing it, but I want to pause here, foot goes under, and then I step over.
Stay right there. Oh, that was beautiful.
So foot under the shoulder.
But everyone look where Michael's knee is. His knee is kind of across the body. I think a lot of us are getting very vertical with our knee. That's bringing our knee up like that, and that tips us back. He's driving that knee across, which allows his hip and shoulder to stay over his opponent. So maybe experiment with that, because that knee doesn't want to be vertical. You want to shove it across.
Exactly, and that's helping pin him down, just like we talked about. Step there. It's the glide again. We're doing a glide through here. We're keeping our pressure on him to our advantage. We're not necessarily stuck and pinned, so he rolls, I go with him. I can still step away. If it just happens that he gets the dynamic to move me, I'm going to just step up and reattack. But I mean, I think what's going on is you're going through the motion. You're kind of going past it. And Tom's right. Make sure you have a contact, pressure across his armpit. And it can be done quickly. If he pressures on me, same idea. He comes up, it's the same idea. I'm just going to stay with it, right? But I'm going to dig this in here. I want this contact before I fall. I want to feel like I'm jamming up into his armpit.
Michael and I, we go at it all the time. He's a great guy for me to roll with. I love it because his style it reminds me a lot of a wrestling style because he's very mobile. He's doing a lot of passes. He's doing a lot of stuff like that. And for me personally, I love rolling with Michael because I think I improve by leaps and bounds every time we roll. His ability to transition is amazing. His ability to defend is amazing because a lot of the stuff that I do are typical wrestling passes where his ability to pick up my wrestling pass, transition into something totally different, and then tap me out in a matter of about 15 seconds. It's pretty great. And I really love rolling with Michael. He teaches me mountains of material every time we roll.
In this variation, I'm going to travel around Troy's head and shoulders. In this case, Troy again is pushing into me, but this time I find myself more over his shoulder and chest. Rather than try to cross his midsection, I'm going to back around in a circular motion. My contact point is going to be either his hands on me or my hands on him, and I'm going to move in a circular motion, ending up again on cross sides on the far side.
Common character trait of a SBG grappler strangely wouldn't be based on their style, but it's the drive of all the grapplers. Each grappler here is very different than the next. There's not, if we would go to a tournament, people won't say, watch out for SBG, they're all about the guard. Watch out for SBG, they only like the top game. It has nothing to do with that here. It's all about flow. And so with that, I think the students here become much more advanced quicker because we can handle every style you can imagine. The only trait they do have is an extreme amount of drive to get better. So the progression moves a lot quicker than some other academies.
What we're going to do now is step back just a little bit. We're going to talk about directional change, right? So we're doing that now. As Troy pushes me one way, I go the other, right? I was asked, why don't I just take the near side arm in that particular move? If he pushes me straight up, why don't I take it? I probably will. It just depends. It depends on the dynamic that happens, right? It may be that Troy throws me all over the place. He could lift me up and toss me that way, right? If I am attached to my advantage, and he does that, I shouldn't get tossed over on my back, right? If he lifts me up to throw me over, and he starts to drag me, just actually gather me up and throw me over like you would. Right? So all I did was, as he threw me that direction, I stepped around his head, like we've been doing, and I gathered posture, I gathered base, put my feet down, right? One of the things I didn't tell you before when we were stepping around the head, I want to have contact with the ground. The contact with the ground allows me to stay based. If I don't have that contact, then in all seriousness, Troy's just going to pick me up and do whatever he wants with me. This time he's going to grab me and throw me to one side. And all I want to do is allow that to happen, but step past it, right? Gather the side, you can dig in, look for a landing zone, whatever you want, but that circular motion, the change of direction, and the contact with the ground. It might be as he lifts me, the best thing I can do for this situation is to push away from him so my feet touch the ground. So rather than allow him to lift me straight up, I'm going to push so I have my feet on the ground. So I'm bracing to get that contact. All right? That was a lot of stuff, but it was really just the same basic idea. As he lifts me and tries to throw me over, I'm going to roll over if I tuck my head and I do a nice little shoulder roll and I allow him to have top position. I don't want to do that. I want to step outside him a little bit and gain the cross-side advantage. All right? Let's try that. Now, if you don't have a giant partner, which I am fortunate to have, improvise. If you're on the bottom, really give him a toss, and you try to help him a little bit if you're on top. Okay?
And you armbar the arm on the other side, or are you just trying to maintain base?
Well, that's a great question. It just depends on what happens. If Troy is not in a good mood and he really wants to give me a throw here, then my most important thought is to secure position. So if he tosses me, I'm going to really try to hold on in position and get to an advantage. But here's what I want you guys to think about. When I fight, especially when I'm giving up size, I want to constantly get back at him. I want to constantly throw offense at him. If I don't, he's going to take advantage of our trade-off in size. I need to make sure that he's constantly on the defense. So to answer that question, I'll take the armbar if it's there, right? Or if I can make it happen there. But if I can't, even if he just throws me to the other side, I'm going to hit, go right into spike, right? Get the head in, drive him down, get to where you want to go. But the idea is I'm going to use that movement to keep him working at a defense where I can have my offense boom, boom, boom.
couple points about the glide, the techniques that we just did. They're not meant to be standalone necessarily. They can be used in combination, and that's important. You want to maintain contact, you want to maintain movement, and you want to keep an eye out for those routes that your opponent's going to create for you. We're going to use the movement of the glide to our advantage to get to those places we want to get to.
The training philosophy here, I would say it's sort of a, I don't know, they like to use aliveness at the gym, but I would say that's sort of a collective effort, I guess you could say, where everyone sort of puts in. It's not, you know, my way is the only way. The coaches aren't telling you this is the way. You know, they're sort of encouraging that, you know, to learn on your own, I guess you could say. But you know, they'll throw it at you, and then if you have something to give back, then you give it back. The attitude here, real relaxed. It's nice to be able to come in here and everyone's real nice, you know, real, hey, how you doing? You know, glad to see that you're in here. Real relaxed, real mellow. It's good.
The next element of flowing pressure that we're going to cover is the spike. The spike is defined as focused contact at the lifting edge. As Troy tries to roll into me or sit up, I'm going to impact that part of his body he's lifting at me. In this case, I'm going to use my head as the spike to impale Troy's shoulder, the lifting edge, as he tries to sit up into me.
Mike's always very frustrating for me because I'm supposed to outweigh him by quite a bit, but he always manages to use his transition game and always uses his mobility so well that he always catches me in something. He has an uncanny ability to be able to catch me at a moment where I'm always somehow in a bad position, and gets to put arm bars on me, and his fluidity and mobility is so good such that even though someone outweighs him by quite a bit, he manages to get himself in really good positions and place submissions on people. And that's a really good source of learning for someone who wants to learn that kind of game.
So that was a very simple example of a spike. In this example, I used my head as the spike to drive Troy back. Now the spike can be any extension that you want to use. I can spike with my hands, I can spike with my knee, I can spike with my hips and my shoulder. Whatever I need to do to spike and push him back down. I'm going to show you a combination now of using a spike to drive him back and then a spike to pin him. You'll see me drive my head into Troy's shoulder to push him back, and then I'll place my knee as a pinning point to achieve a better position. And in that example, hopefully you noticed as I was transitioning around, I was also grabbing at Troy. It's important that we stay attached during the spike. That creates that push-pull dynamic. If I just push, he can get away. If I just pull, he can come on top of me. I want to be able to use both those energies to control his position. Another example that we want to show you is using a spike to pressure somebody back down. In a previous example, we were showing you how to hip glide across or do a windshield wiper position across his midsection. We can do that same sort of motion, but impact him with that spike to push him back down. And here's an example.
I respect every guy that comes in here. Tom respects every guy that comes in here. They've made a choice. They've stepped past that entry where, you know, we do have signs that say leave your ego at the door. You know, it's not about how tough you think you are. It's how you perform on the game or on the training session, in the mat, whatever. I respect those guys that have made that decision. I respect the guy that maybe loses tonight, comes back the next night. I respect the guy that's willing to wrestle that giant man who is probably going to beat him, but you still want to learn from him. I respect the guy that comes in and wrestles the fastest, best guys here. The reality is, those guys are challenging themselves.
All right, we're going to cover now the spike. The idea that we're going to use a focused contact at the lifting edge. We're going to do a couple different examples, and you guys are going to show or practice this in a training situation. All right? Armand, can I bother you real quick? The first one, I want to start in the floating position, cross-eyes position. Armand's going to lean into me. I'm just going to drive my head at his lifting edge, which will be his shoulder the first time, for example. And then Armand's going to lift his hip, and I'll drive my head at his hip. I can use my head, my shoulder, my hands, my knees, whatever I need to push at that lifting edge. All right? And Armand's just going to give me different feeds. He's going to lift with his shoulder, he's going to lift with his hip, he's going to bridge, and I just want to press at those points with my spike. All right? Just a quick example. All right? So basically what we're doing is playing with the idea of knee ride, head spike, shove, whatever it takes to keep that lifting edge down. All of those are going to be spiking devices, all right? We'll take a couple minutes, grab a partner, and we'll play with this. Let's go. So the spike is using a contact point to push your opponent's lifting edge down. Now in some cases you'll use the spike to really pin someone, right? You'll use it as the main piece of play. In this case it's an aid to the glide, all right? And to demonstrate that, let me borrow you, Troy, one more time. What I'm talking about is when you initiate the motion, I've got cross-eyes position, so I'm chest to chest already. I don't disengage chest to chest and jump over. I stay chest to chest. In fact, I pressure into him. What I'm trying to do is maintain as much pressure back so he has to strain to get towards me. So just to demonstrate, I'm going to keep my chest to chest here. As he drives into me, I'm driving my shoulder at him. Okay? But notice what's happening to my body. I'm not driving so hard that I have no movement. As he drives into me, I open my hips up. My hips are prepared to go through this motion. As he drives in and he kicks his leg over to turn into me, I kick over. But it's important that initially I've got chest-to-chest contact and I continue that pressure. All right? That's the beginning of what we're going to go over now, which is the spike. I can also use my head for that same application. So I'm in this position, and again Troy rolls into me. As he does, I start shoulder into him, and then I can drive my head out as I need to. As he puts his legs into me, I use my head to drive over. So I'm using a point of contact to keep him pressured down. Hopefully my movement over is creating pressure and my point of contact is creating pressure so that I stop him in his forward progress. I want him to be held up while I make my movement to the backside. So what I want you guys to do is the same drill we just did. Guy on the bottom, continue to give that that continuous rolling into your partner. Guy on top, I want you to make sure you have that chest contact and feel that shoulder pressure, that shoulder spike. When I glide over top, my shoulder is going to push into his chest/shoulder to keep him at that sort of upright position as I go to the back. Questions?
Don't you want actually to get in his back? So by pushing with your shoulder, you're actually putting him flat back on you.
That's a good question. What we're working with is the push-pull dynamic. If I allow him to roll all the way over and I go to his back, I may have a problem in that he can get to a secure position. Maybe he gets to his knees, maybe he gets up, maybe he rolls all the way away. So what I'm trying to do is stall his position so that when I come over top, I have his back to attack. So yes, you're pushing him back, but what's going to happen when I push Troy and we're in a match, he's generally not going to fall over. In this case, he may because of his base. But if I push at him, he's going to push back into me, generally speaking, right? So that's the dynamic we're working at. We're going to keep our pressure at him, spike it so we can come over top. So let's try that.
Well, Michael's about 5'8", I think. Weighs about 145 pounds, and he's one of the most frustrating people to wrestle with at the gym. Sometimes you'll get a good position on him and he'll just disappear, and then he'll reappear somewhere else, and you're just like, how did that happen? So Michael really uses a lot of speed, a lot of technique, and half the time he's smiling and giggling and his tongue's hanging out of his mouth, and then you're just looking at him and you're trying to figure out what he's thinking, and then he's gone. So then you're looking around and all of a sudden you feel him poking at your neck or peeling an ankle or something. So his style's really, it's really just kind of light. It's like he's dancing all over you, if you're, not lucky enough to get on top of him for a couple seconds. So his technique is really superb. And I don't know if he's thinking he's going to do this thing or he's going to do that thing. I think he just kind of uses what you're doing, against you. So he'll feel you going one way or feel you going for something, and he'll duck out or shimmy around, or I don't even know how to describe it, but it's absolutely a unique style.
So as he drives hard into you, let's check it. Come over. There you go. Be a little more dynamic with that motion. Don't try to step over. I want you to sort of shoot over. So let me switch up with you real quick. So I'm here, and he drives into me. I'm holding underneath. He drives over. I want to check, and I want to just like I'm going to hit him with my knee. I'm going to hit him with my knee. Like I'm popping with it. That way it'll drive my hips through. I want my hips to lead through. I'm going over, but I want you to think that dynamic of kicking the hip through. So as he rolls into me, I'm spiking my shoulder at him. I check here, and I hit him. It's like I'm hitting him. Okay? I think what you're doing is you're kind of low down here. I'd like you to see to come out more over the shoulder or over the hip.
There, now I come in here and to prevent it, I've been opening it up, and it feels like this motion.
You feel compromised there?
I don't like coming into like a dynamic head and arm. It's like I always with big guys.
I want you to try that. Do it again, and then I'm going to pause you. I'm going to have you do a quick submission. There you go. Slide through. I just want you to grab your bicep, but put your head over the mat. Just step over. Keep your bicep though. Yeah, and then drive forward. Put your head over top of him. So even on a big guy, that's pretty easy hit. This move really requires him to roll into me, right? So if I'm cross sides, I'm trying to pin him down, and his legs are up, and he's doing he knows I'm trying to go to guard, or he thinks I'm going to mount, so he has his legs in the way. He's doing all kinds of defenses. This is not the time to try to make this work. I'm not going to get that same dynamic out of it. I really need him to roll into me, right? So for every situation, there's a different tool. Don't try to use the same tool every time. It has to be some dynamic that allows you for that to use that specific movement. So if you feel like it's being forced, it probably is. There's something happening that's not working. So again, this movement works great if he's rolling into me. And a smart player on the bottom is going to be doing a lot of moving, and they're going to try to roll into you as a great option. If he rolls away from me, which is a great option sometimes, just roll away slow. As he rolls away, the problem with this is the back, right? He gave me his back. So there's less of an advantage for him to do that. That isn't to say he never will, but there's more expectation that he's going to roll into me and try to brace, get his knees involved, sweep me in this case, something along those lines, all right? But remember, for this dynamic, I really need him to hip over into me.
I've been at different places, so I think the philosophy is a little different in the fact that we have a free-flowing kind of style that goes on here. So the philosophy is learn whatever works for you. That is not the philosophy at a lot of academies. It's either you do their style, the way they like to do it,
or you're going to have a hard time learning the art. Here, it's everyone just looking at a move and playing around and seeing what works for them. Because there's a lot of moves that don't work for certain body types, but they do really good for other body types. So it's been one of the most amazing things about this gym is watching people progress and someone that's only been here 8 months teach me some stuff that I didn't even think about. So it's been really good.
The third element of flowing pressure that we're going to cover is the tether. Now the tether is not unique to mobility pressure. It's an example of a way to stay attached to your opponent as you transition. The first version we're going to show you is a tight tether or a short tether. As Troy tries to roll into me, I'm going to gather his near side arm and lift it. I'll stay attached to his gi or his tricep depending on what he has on. So now that's an example of a stationary tether. I'm holding him down. I'm using it as a pressure to keep him pinned. I can also use my mobility with that tether to track him and stay attached as I transition to a better position. Same thing on this side.
Wrestling with Michael's sort of an experience, I guess you could say. He definitely has a game that's very unique. When I wrestle with him, I feel like I'm constantly just looking for him. You know, I thought I had him in my guard, but now he's on my back. I thought he was, coming off my back, but now he's mounted. It's just a constant movement. I feel like I'm constantly protecting. I'm sort of on the defense all the time. He's definitely very quick, very very mobile. I'm sort of a little bit bigger than him, so he tends to, just be all over, especially with me. And then suddenly I'm like, where'd he go? And all of a sudden there goes my arm. So it's definitely, it's very mobile and sort of, for me, it's sort of just trying to find him.
So a short tether can be used to pin your opponent, to secure position. But you can also use a tether in combination with mobility. I'm going to gather a tether on this side of Troy's body, transition around, grab a second tether, transition back so that you can see the movement. Tether is, as he sits up, I don't let him, right? I don't let him by attaching myself to this limb and lifting up, okay? In the case with doing the head spike, as he's trying to drive up into me, I'm going to lift up on his body, on his head, and on his shoulders, and that keeps him from easily lifting his leg up. And that's important. So it's not just that I'm holding him down, but I'm also lifting him up. That's my tether. That's when we're attached, we have a leash, we're going to tug on it. All right? We can do the tether from a couple different positions, but I'm going to show you one from cross sides. Just like we've been working today, as he rolls into me, one thing we can do, and I'll show you both gi and no gi, but as he rolls into me, one thing I can do is take the bottom arm and lift up on it. He's trying to roll over on that shoulder. So if I can attach myself to this bottom arm and lift it up, I can stop that rollover. I can help, again, stall him out until I improve my position. And it might be, again, we pull up on this, we hip slide through. We go to the other side. But we stop his progress through a lift, through a pull this time. And again, generally speaking, you're going to use these in combination. You're not going to just do one or just do the other, but you're going to use them together. If I have a gi, can I borrow you, Lauren? The same general idea. He rolls into me. What I'm going to do is I have a basic cross-sides position. He's going to take his arm and go underneath me. He's starting to get up. What I'm going to do is grab his gi and lift up on that arm. Right? We call this a tight tether.
I'm grabbing, and I'm going to use that to either keep him in position, set up a submission, or transition. So what I want you guys to do now with your partner, guy in bottom is going to roll into you. And what you're going to do is get a hold of the near side arm and lift up on it. Okay? Just this tight motion. I'm just going to lift up and see how easy it is for him to roll over. See if he can roll over. Yeah, so really, if he's really tugging on that arm, there's an opportunity for you, especially if you and I, if I'm in that position, your ability to roll me over. I got the stuff on, so I got to be careful. But the idea is, if I'm pulling here and I'm trying to lift you from turning into me, you turn into me. I'm stopping the turn into me, but the risk there is that, yeah, exactly. So I have to be prepared to, again, circle out, disengage.
Is me pulling under the whole body. A tether is picking
a limb, right?
I've heard it said that a guy comes in the gym and he's got some attitude and he's not maybe friendly or comfortable with what's going on, wants to be a big, tough, macho guy. Well, that guy generally does not make it. That guy generally doesn't last, or he changes, or he sees what's going on with us. What we're about is just improving, about getting better in the game, about finding better ways of doing it, whether it's a sport or a game.
So on that tether, that short tether or the tight tether, we attach ourselves to the limb that's trying to roll away from us. We lift that up. We do that because he wants to roll into us, he wants to roll on top of that, so we're not letting that happen. It's not as visual here. It's harder to see because you got contact. Also, if I'm a big, strong guy, I can use this just to keep him pinned, right? I can hold that same position, just keep him down. It's an excellent opportunity to do that. The next variation is the long tether. The long tether, or the distance tether, is a way of, again, staying attached to your opponent, but using some extension of their limbs to keep them down and to give you more mobility. The first example I'm going to show you is taking a knee ride position while pulling at his sleeve. And you'll notice I lift his arm and pull it like a leash. And here we go. Okay, go ahead. In this example, Troy's able to push me away and insert his legs between us. I'm going to gather his leg and use the pants, his leg, as a tether. I'm going to pull that and use that to approach him again and try to recapture position. That's good.
How do we adjust for each athlete? How do we encourage each athlete to move along, to progress? I think that's a great question, a perfect question. The idea that everyone is the same or that everyone can be trained in the same manner is incorrect. I think everyone has a way of absorbing information. Some people you can literally tell them what to do, they'll do it. Some people you have to write it down for them. Some people they have to feel it before they understand what's going on. And I think as a coach, that's where we do our best work. That's where we figure out what kind of instruction this guy needs. Some people, again, we've got these collegiate wrestlers in here that you'll get a move off on them, a submission maybe, it'll never happen again. They saw it, they know what it is, that's it. Other guys take a little longer. Other guys you say, this is an arm bar, this is an arm bar, this is an arm bar. And that's not a bad thing, that's just a different way of doing it. That person, maybe who took a little longer to pick it up, he may have it much more solidly in his mind, and that's an important thing.
when I coach, a lot of times I won't necessarily by design tell everything that's going on with the move. A lot of times I'll show the basic move. Here's what we're doing. And I'll let them try it. I'll let some guys succeed in it. But because of my lack of instructions, some guys will fail. It's not exactly all there. They'll make a slight mistake. But if we do that, and then we go back and say, now here's that piece I left out, or here's that piece I forgot to say, whatever, however you want to present it, the appreciation is there. They understand that you can do a move very slightly different from how you did the move previously, and it can either work or not work for you. So giving someone the correct information after they've suffered a little bit is a one way that we might train somebody. But as a goal, I guess, I want to make sure we find out what things trigger the retention for most of the students, and then also specifically for certain students. If a student comes to me and says, I'm having a problem with this specific thing, what can we do? How can I do this better? Well, it's much easier to work one-on-one with somebody and say, here's a specific tool for you. Here's something I'd like you to absorb. Here's something I'd like you to do in this position. And we can hand that information to that student, where if I were to direct it in the same manner to the whole class, it might not make it properly. So I think being flexible, having variation is important.
This time, as I capture the knee ride position and pull the long tether, Troy's going to move more of a defensive positioning. I'm going to stay tracking with that tether, trying to manipulate his direction, his movement, until I can recapture position. I'm going to do the next tether, a distance tether, just to give you a little more example of what we're talking about. Like we talked about in the beginning when I grabbed Armand's foot and lifted that up, if I lift this part of his body, when he tries to sit up, he's not able to, right? We're going to use that as our lift. Rather than having to hold his whole body, we're going to sharpshoot a limb. We're going to try to pick one liftable, movable object and use that to our advantage, right? The next one we're going to do is just a distance tether. And the idea with this is I have some length to work with. It might be that I go cross sides, he lifts me up, and I'll just capture that arm. So as an example, he presses into me. I'm going to pull that arm when I sit up, right? It's not just that I'm going to let him lift me up. I'm going to go past where he was trying to lift me. I'm going to attach to his arm, and I'm going to lift. Notice I grabbed Troy with a gi on. This makes it a whole lot easier with a gi, right? It's hard for me to hold Troy's arm by grabbing his wrist and try to make this happen. So there's things we can do, but just know that realistically I'm looking for a good handle for this to work for me. As Troy lifts me away, I'm pulling to create a push-pull pressure again. My knee slides in, I've got my knee ride position, I'm going to pull this, right? Generally speaking, he's going to do a couple different things, and we're going to just adjust with those options. Just like we did before, if he pushes on me, I go around. If I lift up and he starts to carry me over, I'm just going to step around. I'm not necessarily going to let him dictate what goes on. I'm going to use my movement to stay a little ahead of him, right? Now, this distance tether gives me that pull, that lift away. It gives me a tool to work with, right? Now, if I keep this, depending on what he does, I have lots of options. If he rolls away like he just did, I might roll this down on top of him, right? I step over and I have a nice grip on this collar still, or this sleeve. I use that to move him around, okay? That's if he rolls away. If he continues to fight into me, trying to roll at me, I might just keep the arm, step across. Again, similar position, right? I've got his back and I've got his arm. This tether becomes an aid to me. As he tries to scoot away or move around, I'm going to use that to keep him from getting where he wants to get. Okay? So we get leashed up, basically, to our advantage. If it becomes a disadvantage, if he captures my gi and starts using it against me, I'm just going to leave the scene, re-attack from another angle. Okay? So if you don't have a gi on, or if your partner doesn't have a gi on, just experiment with the same position, trying to grab his sleeve, trying to grab his wrist. See how that works for you, but get that extension, all right? If you have a gi, get a nice bite. Don't put your hand inside. Keep it outside. Pistol grip or outside grip's fine, all right? Let's go.
It's really hard without a gi. I don't even know if I don't even know if I'd do it. Without a gi, I probably wouldn't do it. It's just too hard to hold on to. But with a gi, just play them around, lay them down. That's one of my favorite ones. If you take the sleeve, pull it up, and then just lay it over here. It's great. Then I can come inside, roll you up, take you back.
I work at a hospital. I'm a doctor. I do mostly research, and I work on the brain. I'm a neuroscientist, and I'm pretty much working on a part of the brain that is involved in Parkinson's disease and schizophrenia and drug abuse. And it's one of my favorite spots of the brain because it's such a small little bit of brain, but it's so involved in so many diseases and social problems. So that's another one of the things I like about Straight Blast Gym is that it's geared towards teaching people who actually have jobs and actually have 9-to-5 commitments and commitments with family. I happen to have a little daughter and a wife that I have commitments to. I have to spend time with them. I have to spend time at work. And even though I have all these other commitments, I am able to still come to this gym and actually improve my game and actually learn how to become a better wrestler or a better jiu-jitsu practitioner or a better boxer or a better whatever it is that I want to learn at Straight Blast Gym.
In this variation, we're going to combine a tether with hitchhiking action. In this case, Troy's able to roll away from me. He's braced up and is trying to escape out that side. I'm going to establish a tether, allow his movement to pull me up, and I'm going to attack his neck. I'll show two variations. The first, I'm going to stall him out early and choke him early. The second, I'm going to allow him to pull me up into the full back position. Again, why would I do this? I would do it as an option, right? It gives me movement. It gives me control of my opponent. It gives me freedom to travel around and still commit some offense, right? An additional tether involves maybe gliding to the other side of the body. If I've been unable to stop Troy from rolling into me, I might glide over to the other side and take his arm, okay? And in that sense, we're going to have a tether. I'm going to isolate one arm and I'll pull against it. And I'll just show you what I'm talking about. I'm in this general position and he drives into me and starts turning over. And I'm having a hard time because of our weight discrepancy. He flips his hips through. He gets to his knees. It becomes a problem. He's either going to take me down or at the very least we're going to get neutral. So I'm going to step across the other side and I'm going to hook his arm as I do it. So I'm here. He drives over into me. I step over and I look for this arm immediately. Either hook underneath, grab it, however you need to. I like to do this and then I'm going to sit away. So if he continues to pull that way, I'm going to hold his arm. Now, I can't stop Troy really from going anywhere, but if I attach myself to his arm, he's got to bring it with him. And if I can resist that by bracing at his back, go ahead and pull. I'm going to resist him by bracing at his back, keeping him from turning over. So he's not getting to his knees. Troy's not going to do this very long. Troy's going to say, going to go the other way. But I have choices. I can go right to the submission from here, or at the very least, I can stay my safe cross-sides position. But I'll do it one more time. What I want you guys to do is just get in the idea of to pin down a bigger guy, I want to pin down an arm. I could spike, I could glide, I could do some combination thereof, but what we're going to do now is glide over, take that arm, just pull it. Okay, gi or no gi, we're going to go around it. So I'm here, he rolls into me, I'm going to slide over, take that arm and pull him back. Obviously I don't have the perfect position, but I'm fine here. As he moves into me, I can reset, I can knee ride, change up, but I'm loose. I'm loose to my advantage, right? But I'm attached also to my advantage. So let's just try that. Last thing we're going to do, I just want you to hip slide over, take that arm and pull it away from him. Think about it as this is just a big handle. Hi, Troy. We're going for a walk. I've got the leash. All right? Let's try it. If you can, try to take that arm as you go through.
Okay.
So, if I'm down and he steps into me, I clip over, and my arm, my trailing arm is either going to drag it back or I'm going to gather it as I go through. Rather than coming through and then grabbing it, it's the dynamic of taking that arm with me. So the smart guy's going to have his arm underneath you, typically. So as I come through, I might just come right here and pull it. But there's that I've got that motion from the beginning. Rather than coming over here and then looking for it. If he's got his arms going away from me, that's really hard. If I've got him pulled out, then for him to roll away, he's going to hurt himself. That's where I've got that opportunity to either lay him back down if I want, or maybe go after a submission.
Okay.
really trying to get that.
I think Michael's game for me is based on transitional flow. If I could break it down, he knows obviously all the submissions. He's very advanced in that. But what makes him unique is how he can flow from maneuver to maneuver and be 2 steps ahead of you when you don't even know what the heck's going on. So it's a gift he has that is hard to encompass and learn how to pull off what he does. He can move literally from the guard to your back before you even really knew what happened, and he'll switch it up every single time. You'll get back in that exact same position and say, he'll never do that again to me, but he does it, and it's in a different way. So if anything, Michael's flow is what makes him unique and special in the art of jiu-jitsu.
Like the other elements of flowing pressure, the tether isn't meant to be used alone. Used in combination, the tether, the spike, and the glide are tools you should add to your toolbox. You can do this by practice, flight time. Spend time with these elements, break down drills, create situations where you can process this and add them to your game. What we're looking for here is taking these tools, these options in game, out of your attribute-driven game and placing it into a reliable tool. And you can do that again through flight time and time spent. The dynamic we're working with is just that exchange. If we use flowing pressure, movement around, we can fight someone who's bigger, stronger, faster, smarter, whatever. We're going to use that gap for us. We're going to use that gap to our advantage. We're not going to give so much space they get away, but we're not going to be so tight that we get rolled every time he decides to move over. So it's important that you be comfortable with that, and it's one of those things you got to play with it. Are there times when I will gather up the body and stay really tight and attach? Yes. Will I use some of my contact pressures, my hugging? Yes. So this is just an option. This is another piece of play, but you want to have both arsenals depending on the game, right? You'll have a sense of where things are going, action's going. You feel yourself getting tossed over, separate, get enough space for you to move, but keep your partner down.